Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. Fridays are a great day for me. I don't know about you, Tony, but I get to spend 30 minutes just plumbing the brain of you and getting your wisdom. And I love it, love it, love it. Thank you.
Thank you again for having me on. I love Fridays too. I look forward to this every single week. And I look forward to some of the challenging topics and the conversations that we have. So, yeah, grateful to be here. Thanks again.
Well, today we're going to talk about something. When is it okay to release a donor? When I first met the great Terry Axelrod, who created Raising More Money and then Benavon, I was a young board member and I had been sent to her trainings. And she came up with this phrase, bless and release. And it really hit me. And it was, the whole concept was, you're not a good fit for us now. We're not a good fit for you now, but go forth and do great things. and it was just such an interesting thing that it's always stuck in my mind. And so I really was looking forward to having this conversation with you about what it could really look like and how we should be thinking about it. So our topic today is, when is it okay to release a donor? And we'll get more into what that actually means. Again, we have the blessings of great sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and 180 Management Group. Our co-hosts are amazing today. Again, I'm Julia Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, here with Tony Beall, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy. And the rest of our co-hosts are amazing. But I think Tony and I have a special bond because I'm always like, Tony, what do you think? So this is really a fun thing to have him with me to get going. So let's start off with, what does it mean to you, Tony, to release a donor?
Yeah, what does it mean to release a donor? And you and I talked a little bit about this in the green room. And so total transparency, I've never released a donor, but certainly have had experiences where I've thought about what would be the process for releasing a donor, and have certainly, heard many stories from others about releasing a donor. And I like to think of it more of redirecting a donor than releasing a donor, because I feel like, as ambassadors for the nonprofit sector, it's important that we do everything we can to keep folks engaged and kind of moving forward on their philanthropic journey, if they've selected to kind of go down that road. So what does it mean to release a donor? I think what that means is coming to a point of truth, where you realize that the alignment of donor needs and your organization are no longer where they might have been when the donor first came on board with the organization. And it's having those conversations and realizing those truths, and then seeing how we can, if there's no other option, when you say that, how can we redirect this donor to another organization that they can be equally passionate about, and that can continue to meet their changing needs as a donor. So that's what I think about when I think about, what does it mean to release a donor?
Yeah, I think I love what you said, and I think it's really important for the sector as the whole, is that, it's a fit, it's an issue of fit, but don't stop being a philanthropist. Move on.
Exactly.
And how can you continue to, and I loved what you said, find another organization where you have a shared passion or interest, and then go from there. Because to me, that, we want to cultivate philanthropy across our communities and our American culture, because it's so unique. It's so unique how we do things here compared to the rest of the world, for many reasons.
It is so unique. And the other thing that I think I failed to mention in my initial thoughts is that when we talk about releasing a donor, and it's no different than if you're releasing an employee, a team member, if you're releasing a contractor or a service provider, you want to do so with the highest level of dignity and respect, for the individual. So just, that was just something that I failed to mention. But, because release is a strong word, and we just want to make sure that we continue to treat folks with the level of dignity and respect that they deserve for what they have done historically to support your organization and make your community better.
Right. And I love that you said that, because I think that's true to the concept of community building and how we encourage our citizenry in a civil way to, support things. And so
Mhm.
so let's dig down a little deeper. What are the situations that could lead to, ending a donor relationship? What does that look like, and what have you seen?
Yeah, so what I've seen, I see this happening from my experience, and again, from some of the stories that have been shared with me. This tends to happen at the higher level of donor more so than kind of your mid-level,
Okay.
kind of lower level, all very important, donors when you look at who's contributing to your organization. So this tends to happen at the higher level. And that tends to happen because when we have donors that are contributing a lot, and when we think of them as investors for the cause, sometimes the lines can be blurred around the level of contribution that that donor should be making on a day-to-day basis. So sometimes a high-level donor will want to make decisions around staffing, will want
Mm,
to make decisions around the mission or the direction of a program. And so then you might have to kind of pull back a little bit and have a conversation with that donor to kind of remind them really what is the mission and vision of the organization and what the role is of the professionals that have been hired to manage, run, and lead the day to day operations of the organization. So that's one situation in particular that I think leads to ending a donor relation. Something may come up with that donor that no longer aligns with the ethics of your organization.
yeah.
Uh, so you may have to, and these are tough, tough conversations. Uh, but
Right.
you have to protect your organization. You have to protect your mission because the services that you're providing to the community are vital. And so sometimes you have to have these tough conversations in order to protect the mission of the organization and the community that you're serving. But again, sometimes something might come up with a donor where the ethics no longer align with the organization.
So let's dig a little deeper and talk about that, because I'm thinking of an organization that I was somewhat involved with in my own community who had a major donor, a transformative gift that was well over $1 million for this organization. And this business owner, an entrepreneur, had made their money in a fashion that um, didn't align with the mission and the client profile. And so there was a sense that it was, and I want to use the word, it was like a syntax, right? It was they had made their money with what several people on the board or in leadership felt like was, a sinful product, right? And I don't know how to
Mhm.
phrase that.
I think
Um,
no, I think you did that beautifully. Yes.
so this gift would have transformed the organization and allowed them to take their programming to another level. And the board members, the majority of the board members said, no, we will not take this gift. And the CEO and the C-suite said, if you don't take the gift, we're all going to quit. So they had all met and said, because this is a transformative situation for us, and that it was a starting point too. They felt like that $1 million was going to roll into many other gifts based on their conversations and what they were doing with this family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it caused a community stink because everybody else was coming back to their own organizations and saying, holy cow, what's our gift acceptance policy? This organization didn't have one.
Mm-hmm.
And so it got down to like, if you sell alcohol or tobacco, if you are involved with selling firearms, if you sell pornography, I mean, it got onto so many different topics, and it reverberated, Tony, throughout our community. And to this day, when something a little wonky happens, this story, this lore is repeated, right? And everybody talks about it. So, how do you see this?
Well, I think you brought up something really important that should be mentioned here, and that is the creation of giving guidelines for your organization, and what is that gift acceptance policy. A lot of organizations don't do that, and certainly, with the internet and AI, you can find a policy like that that you can easily modify to kind of suit the ethics and vision of your organization. So I think that's a first really good step, Julia, to preventing that from happening. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, when we talk about transparency and ethics and fundraising, I mean, I could probably sit here and think of a couple of other creative ways to still have accepted those funds without the publicity or the branding that might have come along with a gift that the community might have, felt came from not the best source, but that's not the space we're in, and so I respect in the case that you brought up, I respect the kind of position of staff. I mean, they're looking at this and salivating like, wow, what we can do with this. And what it can mean for the community, and our board is saying no. Right. I understand that, but I really think at the end of the day, the board made the right decision, unless you're willing to just kind of like button it up and say we're going to take it and we're going to deal with whatever the fallout might be, and we're going to have a communication plan to support why we accepted this gift. And especially in certain communities where there is a lot of chatter, you need to be prepared if you're going to kind of accept a gift that you already know may be a bit controversial.
Okay, then let me throw this one at you. Uh-oh. I'm thinking I know this is one of my favorites, and I think about this a lot. I'm kind of a geek, so I think about weird things. But, the Carnegie Library System is one of the great philanthropic endeavors of the starting of America, really through the industrial age. Libraries were private. The Carnegie Library System was created. A community would have to guarantee, land and so much structure and this and that. And then the Carnegie Group would basically match it. Many, many people believe that was a redemption gift based on phenomenal labor unrest that ended with a lot of lives lost throughout the Carnegie investments. And that's, again, that's another discussion. But what if this isn't you find somebody that has a redemptive motivation, that they invested or did something in their life that they weren't that proud of, but they benefited economically, and then they want to return that. I have been a part of something like that. I've been a part of well, multi-million-dollar gift where I was brought in to talk to this man. He seemed very humble, and I was the person sent forward to do the deed, and he witnessed to me that he was dealing with some shame, and the largesse, the financial gains that he met or that he had grown, um, were not so savory. They weren't illegal. They were more what we would call, a sin product. And in his remaining years, um, he had lost his wife. He didn't have a relationship with his children, and he thought that this was something that would redeem him. And it was really powerful. And I was stuck in a situation we were in a restaurant of all places. And I was like, okay, mentally I'm like, oh no, I didn't expect that. I felt like this man was in pain. And I'll be really candid with you, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like maybe we shouldn't take that money.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe that maybe he needed help, and this was not the right way to do it. Mm. And we did take his money, and we did have a relationship with him, and he did support us, and with a lot more money over the years, he would come quietly to events and things. But I sensed that this man had some demons, and I felt a little unseemly about being a part of that ask.
Yeah, that's quite the story, Julia.
I know.
So I'll look forward to more of those in your next book. Those types of stories.
I know. I wasn't going to share that, but it just came up. I'm sorry. Fridays are good, you guys.
No. It's. I mean, it's other folks I'm sure have that same experience. As donors, we're all motivated in different ways to contribute to nonprofit organizations. And so he just happened to have a very kind of unique motivation based on what we typically experience in fundraising. I love people. And I love people that evolve to be better people. So I would celebrate him all day long. Again, not part of the conversation, need to know more, but on the surface, I would celebrate him all day long for at least wanting to have some accountability for past behaviors or decisions that at this point in his or her or their life, they feel differently about.
Yeah. Well, you're a lovely man, and that's to me, that's a perspective of grace, right? That you look at this, and it's such an interesting thing. We don't often talk about donor motivation, right? we talk about the donor checkbook, and to say, to really dig down a little bit deeper. I think we need to do that. Well, let's get into this next level, because I think this is fascinating. How do donor agreements factor into the process? Again, working with another organization in my community who didn't have what they called then a bad boy clause, and this involved an individual who had naming rights on a particular campus, public campus, got into some hot water legal troubles, and then their name was up in lights, and the organization wanted to distance themselves. It involved a judicial piece. It was for drunk driving, and they had a component of alcohol, issues within the organization. Felt like alcohol contributed a lot to their clients' problems. So they could draw a line to, that issue, but they didn't have any agreement in place. And so they had to kind of live with it. I think this happens a lot. And I'm wondering what you think, because I think it could go the other way too, to protect the donor.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, in my experience, whenever I've been involved in any naming of anything, there has always been a donor agreement.
Mhm.
Uh, and I'm not an attorney, but there are typically clauses that where there's an out clause, or based on X, Y, and Z, the organization may decide to remove the name from the building. Who, if the building gets sold, I mean, there are all of these variables that need to be included in that agreement. But even though there is an agreement, and again, we're talking about high level donors, if we're
Yeah.
talking about naming rights and these types of agreements. But they are often something that can be subtly referred to when you have that high-end donor that is wanting to make decisions around staffing, or wanting to make decisions around marketing, or whatever that might be, around the day-to-day operations of the organization. So it can protect the organization and prevent you from being in this space where now you have to start having this conversation about potentially releasing or redirecting this donor, because somewhere along the line they have developed this sense of empowerment that is not beneficial to the organization's desired outcomes.
And Tony, you said something really magical there, because I think in the for-profit world, that's what happens. You score the big sale, you get the great contract, and you move up, and you elevate your level of power and
Mm-hmm.
influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's true.
I don't think it's necessarily like evil or vicious. I just think it's a methodology that I'm dare I say, older, leaders are used to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
then when they make an investment in the for-profit world, treated one way, they make an investment in the nonprofit world, they're like, wait a minute, this is what I know. This is how I think I should go. So I
Well,
love what you said about this.
I think, and what you said too, Joy, they typically, these folks are bringing a lot of experience
Yeah.
along with their financial contribution or investment. So if they see something that they feel should be modified, they're going to be compelled to share that with you based on their lived experience.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's such an interesting conversation. We don't
Relationships, relationships, relationships. It's all about relationships.
You are right, my friend. You are right. Well, let's go to this last question then. How, in that spectrum of relationships, how do we know if it's just me and it's not that the donor should leave the organization, but maybe the relationship management should be moved to somebody else? Because, we don't always click. And
yeah,
how do we
yeah.
know that?
Yeah, we don't always click. And I think when we talked a little bit about handling or embracing objections in one of the other shows,
Yeah.
one of the hidden objections from donors is often this not liking of, for whatever reason, the development professional that they're working with. Or sometimes they may be super passionate about the mission and not really like, the CEO or executive director, again, for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Who knows what that
Right.
might be. But I think, again, when we talk about this being based on relationships, pretty early on in the process of building the relationship if you're a good fit. I think if we're talking about releasing a donor, we're talking about a circumstance or situation that goes beyond the relationship, the one-on-one relationship with the development professional. So then I do think that it takes a conversation with the board chair, the CEO and the development professional, the three of them, to have a conversation about the donor, next steps, who wants to carry the torch before we kind of put it out or transfer it right to another organization. So, and when I mention things, when I say things like transfer or recommend them to another organization, it's not that you're trying to pass along a problem, but again, we don't want folks to lose interest in philanthropy and giving. And I would rather introduce them to another organization and hope that it works out well than to create some scenario that gives them a bad experience that, one, doesn't look good for my organization that I'm supporting, and doesn't look good for the sector as a whole.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's amazing. And I also think too, this is a new discussion that needs to be had as we have this aging population of wealthy people in our country that are leaving, the workaday world. They're moving more into retirement, or they're scaling back. They're going to have more resources and time to invest in this way, invest themselves. I mean, you hear this all the time, Tony, people that are like, I'm leaving corporate America because I want to have an encore, career in philanthropy, or, investing my money in philanthropy. And so this is not a story that's one and done. I think it's just really kind of going to be ramping up here. And I think it's been amazing to have this conversation with you. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It was a really interesting topic. So thank you.
Yeah, it really is. And I think to our viewers and our listeners, reach back out to us where you have struggled or what you have seen, because I think we'll be chatting about this more, Tony. And it's going to be part of the ecosystem of how we manage our nonprofits. Just the concept of having a gift policy and the MOUs, the memo of understandings with folks that are going to be doing, larger investments, or and maybe have naming rights or endowments, endowed, titles. I'm seeing that more and more in my community. I don't know about you in Florida, but where, major donors are endowing the salaries of the CEOs. And then that's a named piece. And
Sure.
Fascinating, a super cool thing to do. Imagine if you had an organization and you never had to worry about where the CEO's salary was going to come from.
I love hearing stories about that.
Yeah, we're seeing that here, and I mean it happens a lot in the university system, and why it's taken us so long in the nonprofit sector, and to do this. But you think about endowed chairs, you see that all over the university system, and
it's true. It's
so,
true. Well, I think in today's environment, folks are more aware of not only where their money's going and to what type of organizations and businesses they're supporting, but I also think they're more aware of where their money's coming from.
Yeah.
And kind of, thinking about how that sits with them, individually. So
I think it's very true. Well, this has been riveting. And again, I want to make sure that we end the week with a big shout out of gratitude to our presenting sponsors: Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, Nonprofit Thought Leader, Your Part-Time Controller, Fundraisers Friday, and 180 Management Group. These are the folks that join us day in and day out so we can have these riveting conversations. Tony, our sponsors do not extend any pressure when it comes to our content, and I would use the word editorial direction. And that's pretty magical, because the conversation we've had today about
exactly
investors enforcing or impacting what you talk about. And, I have competitors on all the time to our presenting sponsors that come on and talk about their work and their businesses and their products. And that's really magical. That's magical that we have that environment.
Well, I've often said on the many times, and thank you again, the many times that I've been able to be on the show with you and others, that these folks are doing more than sponsoring the nonprofit show. They are actively showing their support and commitment to the betterment of the entire sector by supporting this show. So kudos to them.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. I think it's magical and something we appreciate. Well, you've, as always, Tony Beall, Mr. Nonprofit Consultancy, have totally like given me some hair on fire moments. I love ending my week with you. So you give me things to think about over the weekend and how I frame up my next week's worth of work. I'm very, very interested in this topic. And like I said, I think we'll revisit it. So as we end every episode, we like to end with this mantra, and it says simply to stay well so you can do well. Thank you.